Welcome everyone to today's class. This is our week 8, second day. Today we'll be looking at custom hooks. Yeah, so from our understanding, we have hooks. React have their inbuilt hooks, right? That we've been using already. We've been using hooks like use state, use effect. There are other ones like use memo and use callback. Yeah. So we are going to be treating a scenario where we can create our own um, custom hooks, right? So we can create some things that we can reuse just the way we use states to and use callback and maybe use memo. Yeah. So we can create our own hooks and they can serve the same function, serve the functions that we want them to serve just as much as the React pre is predefined hooks work. All right. So first things, we are going to be working with a model. We'll create a model component, and then we'll see how custom hooks work with a model component. Let me give you a little bit of on the ground. The whole concept. Okay. So custom hooks in React allow you to encapsulate and reuse logic between components. So we want to be able to reuse our logic within other components, right? When you need to share the logic for showing and hiding a model across multiple components, you can create a custom hook for managing that model state, right? So we'll just do a step-by-step process of how we can handle this. I'll start by creating a custom model, but before then, let us remove what we did before from our app.jsx and reuse the same application. Okay, are we together? All right. So yeah, so we can now build from scratch here, and we're good. All right. Okay, so first step, let's create our custom hook, right? I'll create a component folder and we'll call it custom hook. We'll create a new file. Can call it the same name. JSX. Okay, with this done, we can now go ahead and install and import the necessary importations that we would need to create our hook, right? So let's say I want to use states. And then I want to also use callback. All right, for this custom hook. So let's initiate our custom hook and call it use model. All right. So we can now define our modal states, initial state, and our function to set states. Const is modal open, set is modal open, use states. Initially false. Okay, now we can go ahead and define our open states for the model, right? So let's say const our function to handle the opening of the model. You say open model, and then we use our use callback function, use callback hook. Then we set is model to true. So when this is triggered, we want to set model to true. So for this model state now, we are going to be triggering it and opening that model, right? Changing the state from false to true. Do you understand? Okay, so let me, so they use callback hook. It's a React hook that returns a memoized version of the callback function, right? That only changes if one of the dependencies has changed. So for this use callback now, we are just saying that we want this scenario, this open modal state to only change if the dependency or one of the dependencies, which is the action that we are going to take on the model, right? Even though for this very scenario, we are going to have an empty dependency array. So assuming we have dependencies to add to this dependency array, we will be able to monitor and change or utilize this callback anytime those dependencies change. All right, so yes, so we're using this to make sure that this whole function only changes if the dependencies change. So in this case now, we don't have any dependency. So that automatically means we don't want this thing to change at all until another action is taken, which is the next function that we are going to create now. Const close modal. And then we use our callback again. But this time we want to set it to false. Okay. Now we can also handle this by, we can also create a function to toggle the state. So it's just like saying we want to have an on and off switch. We use the callback. And then for this, we say for previous. So what we are doing here is we're now saying, okay, for this very toggle scenario, we want to use the previous state, right? Which is this prev. We want to use this previous state to set the new state to the opposite of the current state. Do you understand? So we're saying if the state is false right now, we want to use what was the state before it was false. So since we have just two options there, we have true or false. It's either it is true or it is false, right? So I was saying, okay, that means if we are false, we want to replace that false with the opposite, which is true. In essence, we cannot, it's going to work like a toggle. It's going to work like a light switch, where if you click, every time you press the button, it gives you a different action. So it's either putting it on or putting it off. So it's either turning, yeah, of course you can do that. So this is like a more open way of handling it, right? So you understand at least the nitty-gritty part of the action that is being taken within this scenario. Do you understand? And that's for you. Are you good? All right. Okay, so let's move on. So we can now return this. Yeah, we are going to be returning this model open. Then we'll return open model, close model, and toggle model. All right, so we have an error. Let's fix the error. Okay. All right. So do we all understand what we have done here? Okay, so someone has a question. Adelby, unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. So I was wondering, what's the advantage of using use callback over use state?
So basically, it's the whole concept of memoization, right? So when we talk about memoization in React, right? Memoization can be used to optimize the performance of the functional components, right? And hooks. That
Okay.
provides built-in hooks. They use memo and callback. Do you get? These are memoizing hooks specifically used for optimization.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
So when we talk about memoization and what we are trying to do, we are just trying to prevent our function from being recreated on every render, on every render, unless there is a change in dependency. That's why we have dependency array here, right? That's why we
Okay,
have
sir.
dependency array. So this in scenario there, let's assume that we want to use a use callback scenario in maybe making an API call, and then we have that use call. Yeah, yes, exactly. So you get so even use effect has that kind of um memoizing effect, right? But use effect is mostly used for monitoring life cycle. Now, for callback is mostly functional, function based, right? And for this now, we're just saying that we don't want to recreate this action or this function except there is a change in the dependency array. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. All right. So yeah, basically, benefits of using this whole using memoization generally, performance improvement, right? Reducing the number of computations by catching results. Do you understand? Then same thing with loading to faster execution. All these are performance improvements that you can benefit from memoization. Goes the same thing with efficiency. It can improve your efficiency, right? So let's assume that you have like expensive computation, right, that you want to do. Memoization helps with expensive computations. Yeah, exactly. Also helps with stabilizing function references. Yeah, and state management too. So there's a lot of advantage to using memoization. So you can use callback, or you can use memo. Use memo is actually the main uh, hook for memoization, right? Okay, let's move on. Before this class ends, we are going to do we'll do one expensive computation example and see what it looks like. Are we together? Okay, I'm right here. All right. So let's move on. Let's modify let's create our model. So now we have our custom hook, right? Use model. These are all the properties that we have right now. So we can now create our model component. Model.jsx. All right. So for these, we will need to do a little styling. So let's just go ahead. So the structure is model open. And then we want to check, want to bring in close model. And we want to pass children as props. All right. So we'll say if we want to return null. Okay. So let's have another div here. And then let's have children. Okay, so let's just use this. Right. Okay, so we have basic styling for, yeah, okay. So let's say fixed insert set 0, bg black, bg opacity versus 50, influence, just items center. Okay, that's better. And then for this, just do a bg black. Like around the MD. Max width. Okay, we can go on let's have the three styling for our buttons. And it was fine blue. Let's keep this BG. All right, so we have our all right, so we have our modal component created. Sorry, I had to do a little bit of styling so that at least we can visualize it. So with this now, what we want to do now is have our actions to trigger the opening of this modal, right? So we want to handle all that within our app.jsx. Are we good? All right. So let's assume we want to have a H1 tag and call it custom hook or modal. Are we following? We want to have button and then set an on click to that button. an on-click event. And for this on-click event, we want to utilize our open model. But to utilize our open model, we need to import or bring in our hook. So we are going to say const the structure is model open. Also, the structure open model also gets close model and toggle model. So all this now, we are getting it from our custom hook, right? Use model. So we are getting all that from our custom hook, which is use model. All right. So for this now, we can now say, okay, for this button, we want to use this button to handle the opening of our model. So we are going to pass this to the on-click event. Then say open model. So let's just utilize the styling we have for this button for uniformity. Okay. And then we want to replicate this. I want to replicate this for toggle model. All right. With this done now, we can now import our model components and then pass in our properties, our props. So we will pass in the toggle prop so that we can see how the switch works. And we close. So within this model, we want to have some content. So so let's say H2 and say model content. And then let's have a p tag. This is a custom model component using React, using some hooks. Using a custom hook. Okay. So we have initiated our model component here. At the moment, we don't have this feature inside the model component. So let's just bring it in for testing purpose and have a button to test it too. All right. Are we together? Are we good? Enoch, are you still processing or you are with me? You see, are with me for the first time. Okay, nice. Henry, how about you? Are you good? Are you with me? Yano. Good. All right. Ask your question.
Okay, sir. I was wondering how we imported this is mother open. I know we've already defined it the
This,
other custom book.
this,
Yes.
right? So
Yes. I
we
was
are putting it
wondering.
there as props.
Okay, 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 okay.
Yeah. So you see that here where we are defining, where we are,
Okay, yeah.
you know,
Okay, okay, okay. I can
we are
see
passing
that.
it as props. Okay.
Okay, okay,
All
okay.
right.
It's going now.
Okay. Everybody clear now? So this doesn't look decent enough. Let's give it a leave. So justify between it. All right, so we have our model our main component displayed, and what we are trying to do now, what we are trying to visualize is um, how these buttons should work, right? So this very button, okay, let's name it. Let's name it properly. So let's just name it toggle. So that at least we don't get confused. All right. So we have the open modal and the toggle modal, right? That's supposed to be triggered by these two buttons. So if we click on open modal, see that our modal opens up. If we click on close, it closes. So hold on. This modal is not giving. Okay, hold on. Let's start this modal again. Seems to be attached to one corner of the screen, which should not be. All right, so let's say for modal, yeah, we have our surrounding done. No requirement is modal itself. Give me a second, guys. Let me. Mm, Okay, so that we don't waste time on this, we have our functionalities working, so let's just move on. Yeah, absolute positioning should work, right? I was running away from doing that. I want to use this fixed and see one causing the issue. So, okay. So, okay. Okay. All right. Let's work with this. Okay, so let's work with this. I want to also, for this button, let's see how we can give it this. Okay. Okay. So ideally, are you following? Yeah, Ian, thank you for that. Yeah. So open modal opens the modal, right? And if we close it, it closes it. If we open and we still click on this, it closes, right? So if we want, we can still use toggle, or let me just also name this toggle. So, so if you notice, you see that for this toggle, it works like a bulb switch. It's using the same function, which is this toggle model. So in essence, assuming we don't want to create an open model or create this, we can just have this toggle model and it should be able to solve all our problems. Do you get? Should be able to handle everything that we need. Handle the whole function for opening and closing our modal states. Because all we are doing is switching it from one state to another, which is the same thing this function, these two separate functions are doing. Is that clear? Let's do what I think Enoch was the one that asked that question. Let's use this to toggle. So we click on it, it opens, and we click on it, it closes. So it's the same action. Enoch, do you get now? All right, okay, all right. So let's add a little bit of functionality to this to see how, let's add some components to see how we can handle different components dynamically with this same modal hook. So let's create two new components. let's create two new components and call them items list and items details. So let me just create a new folder, call it items. So now say items list. Items list .jsx. Okay, so for this, we want to pass items as props. And then we want to have another prop called on item select. All right. So for this on item select, let's just create our components. So we have a list, UL, and then we want to have items here. So we have items mapped as item using the ID for key. Okay, and then this will be, so for this on item select, we are going to pass in the item that we are selecting, where we are going to create this function, right? So this basically, this should do for our list item, our item list. So let's create our item detail. Item details .jsx. Then we just we have the item, so we're only passing in the item. We're not passing in items, we're only passing in the item. Right? And we want to check if that item exists. So if it does not exist, we want to return null. So if we open an item and it doesn't have any content, we should return null. The item name and description. Okay. Without images. So let's say class name text gray 800, and then we want to say yes, text gray 500. All right. So we can now go ahead and utilize our items within our app.jsx. So if we come here now, based on the implementation we want to have now, let's say we are going to we need to remove this and then import our item details. And then we'll say for item, we want item to be the selected item. To be selected item. So now for selected item, we are going to create a state. Right? And then we will have to update these states. So in order to update this state now, we're going to say const handle items select will be equals to the item. So we'll pass the item, and then for this item that we have selected, we want to set items to this item, and then we want to open our model. Is anyone lost? Is anyone lost? Okay. All right. So we have our handle select item. So we want to display our items, right? So for this case, we are going to introduce the item list. Are you following? Now for item list, we want to check is modal open. Or rather, pardon me, we are going to be checking for items. Yeah. And then on item selects. So if you remember within our components here, we added this function of on item select. And we are going, and this is the function we want to use to trigger that. So we are just going to bring in on item select. And then we'll pass the handle item select function. Then we can close this. All right, so we have an issue here. Item is not closed. All right. So now that we have this defined, all this defined, let us comment this out. All right, then let's say item list with modal details. Okay, so let's have a list of items, because as it is now, we don't actually have a list of items. Let's say const items. So for items, okay, so we can have this number of items. All right, so for items, we have name, ID, name. We are in item list, we are taking only the item name. But for details, we are taking the item name, item description, what, let's use description, and let's give it the price too. And then we say item price. All right. Okay. So we can give this that. All right. Are we together? So on the list, we don't want to display much. We just want to display the name. We are already using the ID as key. So we are now saying for the details now, we want to display the name, the item description, and the item price. There's no much styling to it, so it might not be very beautiful, right? Okay, so we are good. So let's go ahead and check out our implementation. All right. Good. Okay, so let's just have a little styling so that that list can look a little better, right? PX PX of 4 PY2. Okay, let's visualize that. Okay. All right, hold on, guys. Wait. Okay. Okay, so we have our components. So this is a list. We have apple, banana, orange, mango, pineapple, and pear, grapes, and cherry, right? So if we click on apple, it should open our model. You can see the apple, the name, the description, and the price. Are we good? Do we understand? So you see that we can actually use this our custom book. We can use our custom book to let's say we can create a HOC to modify this our model. So we have the HOC modifying the model so that we can utilize one model across the whole system, right? and then modify each model where we want to use it, depending on what features we want to give it, right? And then utilize the same use model custom hook to trigger each model based on their location in the application. Do you understand? Are we together? So, okay, so let me put it this way. So you have this model, right? And we learned about HOC, higher order components, last Monday, right? Now, in the scenario of higher order components, you discover that we created a card. And for that card, let's assume that that card is this model that is open here right now. So for that card, or for that model that is open now, we want to say that we want to create a HOC, that is a higher order component that that modifies the properties of this very component, right? So let's assume that we want to use a blank, want to create a blank that just has the close. We can modify this component using HOC and still trigger this component from anywhere we are using that model component or HOC component. We can trigger it using this custom model hook. Do you understand? In essence, I'm just saying this model custom hook now is giving you a very, very optimized way of handling your model, of using your model feature, right? So if you create a model, you can have one model across the whole system and then have modifications within them, like we did here. So for this model now, we can still have another content. We can still have something else within this model because this model accepts children components, right? So we can actually define something different within this model, like say maybe display our list. Okay, let's not display our items detail. So let's say we want to display our item detail inside this model directly, this item detail, right? We can come here and do the same thing. But for this case, it will be the selected item. All right, still have okay. So I can decide not to utilize these things in the next model, right? And just maybe passing buttons. Anything I do within this model now is going to give it a whole different view here. A whole different view in this model. Are we flowing? So you can customize this model from anywhere. You can utilize this model component anywhere and customize it. That's just what I'm trying to explain. Can we move on? As you can see, each of these model, the information is dynamic. Everything is dynamic in this model. All right, let's move. Let's do one more thing before let's handle. So let me use memo to handle an expensive computation, right? Are we together? Are we together, guys? All right, cool. So let's create, let me close this down. Okay, let's create an expensive to explore the benefits of, to just see what memorization can do. So let's say, let's just create a new component and call it expensive computation. JSX. All right, RAFC. So with this now, we want to import use state. Use state and use memo. All right, so we want to create our expensive function. We'll say const. We'll say const and we say compute expensive value. So it's going to take a parameter called input. So let's give input here. All right. So it's going to take a parameter called input, and we're still using an arrow function. Then for this, we say const. Let's use length since we're going to be changing it. We say result equals to 0. And we say for let index equals to 0 if I is less than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't iterate plus 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 plus. Oh. Okay, then we want to return the value result plus equals input and return result. I hope you're not confused. I guess confused. Anybody lost? Is anybody lost? Okay. All right, just say cost expensive value equals to use memo. We want to memorize the expensive value. I want to say for compute expensive value. Input. Input. Are we together? It says not yet. Okay. You are not yet confused. No problem. It's okay. All right, so let's go ahead and just display our expensive value. Okay, is equals to expensive value. All right, so yeah, I think we should be able to. Okay, so let's create a state for input value, right? And then we say, let's say for input value, input, and to input. Okay, yeah, we're good. So with this now, we can now say button on click. And then for this event, we want to set input. We want to set it to input plus 1. I want to say increments. Increment inputs. Oh, okay, let's see this in real time. Let's initialize this to initialize this to 0. Okay. All right, so we import. Well, let's see how we are. Okay. Let's define input here. Okay. So now we can pass input as props. And let's visualize our code now. All right. So expensive value is 0 at the moment. You notice that every time we click on it, it changes, right? So I'm very confident that some people are lost. So let me know where you are lost so that we can clarify. Or let me just explain this function. So what we are doing here, this here now, we are creating a function and we're passing input as a parameter. And then we're saying we are initializing a variable called result, and we're giving it a value of 0. Then we created a for loop to iterate from I to 0. That's from I equals to 0 to iterate from I equals to 0 to I until I is less than 10 billion. Oh, sorry, 1 billion, right? So inside the loop, are we good? Are we following? So inside the loop, we're returning a result that adds the value of input to result in each iteration. So for every iteration, we are adding the value of input to the new value, right? And then the loop continues. So in essence, what we are doing here is we are simulating a computational expensive task by performing a simple arithmetic operation a large number of times. But because we are using memo to handle it, right? It will not, this expensive computation will not run on an infinite basis. It will not run infinitely. It will run only when there is an action on this button. So assuming this function was to run infinitely, right? It will continue iterating until it gets to 1 billion. Do you understand? Is anybody still in the class? Enoch, do you understand? Okay, not really clear. So let me explain it again. What we are doing here is this is a for loop. So this is a for loop, right? You know how for loops work, right? So we are just iterating through the value that is being produced by this this by this calculation, right? So we're saying that we want to iterate from 0 to 1 billion, but in essence, we don't want to iterate through it except we make an action, except we click on that plus action. That is why we're using use memo. But if we trigger this function without using a use memo, it is going to run infinitely. Do you understand? It is going to run infinitely until it gets to 1 billion. Because we have criteria here now that the only way that we want to stop this loop is if it gets to 1 billion. Now, that is why it's called an expensive computation, because if we want to allow it to run infinitely till it gets to 1 billion, it will take days, right? That's very expensive. It might even crash your system if you don't have, if your processor is not standard, right? So what we are doing with use memo now is control this action to make sure that this action is not running on its own. It is being controlled by use memo. So it gives it that optimization to make sure that it is only when we trigger an action that this function should take effect. So this loop is only going to be running when we click on this button. Are we good? Okay. So any other question? Is it only Enoch that understands this? And that will be okay. All right. Henry, how about you? Hello. Okay. All right. Awesome. Yano, since you guys are doing, I have to be sure that you guys are on the call, are good to go. Yano, are you following? Are you good? All right, cool. Okay, so yeah, that's like a very basic usage of use memo or case scenario of using use memo for memorization. Okay, so I think this is where we are going to stop for today. Don't hesitate to watch the video again. You might forget a little thing, but if you watch the video again, you can follow up. So try and follow up on the videos for other classes that you did not understand properly. Go back and watch the videos, and then try to complete the task that was given. We're expecting our task to drop today unfailingly. So we cannot continue with this pace. We need to be on ground when the tax is dropping so that we can always meet up with our deadlines, right? So if you have pending tax, please do the needful, do the corrections, and make submission. Thank you guys for having me today. I look forward to seeing you guys on Monday. Have a great day and have a great weekend ahead. Bye.